I think if you look at history too, not to like make this like a going into a bajillion examples, but there's, ancient Egypt, with coal in the eyes, and there's so many examples in history where men participated in beauty, not grooming practices. I was in a conversation the other day about nails, and particularly a lot of straight men that are like painting their nails or doing designs on their nails, and it's a form of self-expression. And I had never thought of this, but randomly I was just like, yeah, it's just the same as like getting a tattoo. And then I was like, wait, yeah, why haven't I ever thought of that? I'm like, why is putting a graphic design on your nail any different than a guy going to the tattoo salon and getting whatever they get on their body at the tattoo salon? I'm like, that's so dumb to separate it. So yeah, we're just here to be like, show up as you are. Like, if you want to wear makeup, great. If you don't, great. If you want to use whatever beauty product, great. I think the only thing I'm going to be rigid about is sunscreen, because I do appreciate when people are, working towards having healthy skin.
Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Minutes with Mike. Today, my very special guest, Michael Crumm. Ian, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Ian and I, neither one of us are IT specialists, so there was a little...
It took us 10 minutes to get in. Yeah, at least 10 minutes. I was like...
You do wear many hats, though, and there's so much content here to go over. I don't even know where to begin. But so you're a licensed esthetician. You're a co-host of a beauty podcast, and now the founder of Boys in Beauty.
Yes, sir. Depends on the day.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, can't imagine. But let's start at the beginning. So every story has a beginning, somewhere along the line, childhood, high school, college. Somewhere you got the bug for beauty. Now, I did read that you were thinking about being a chef, which I did not know, which I thought was very cool.
Wow, you really did your research. Oh my gosh. I'm like, where on the internet does that live? Oh my gosh.
Tell me about that. How did that start? How'd you get I mean, everybody certainly has their mentors along the way. We're going to talk about that, but how did it start for you?
Oh, well, yeah, my first career aspiration was to be a chef. I think cooking's very creative. I like being creative. I like eating. How I first got into beauty, I always start with my mother, grandmother. They're both very chic ladies. I grew up, my mom let me kind of just experiment from a young age. I'd see her getting her hair dyed, and at one point I was like, "Can I dye my hair?" And she'd always go to the nail salon, and she, to this day, has like really she loves getting her nails designed. So she'll get crazy cool designs and theme them out. And so I, grew up with her influence and took an affinity for beauty products and just taking care of myself from a young age. And probably right when it came out, but I started getting New Beauty magazine and would look at that. And I'm from Central Pennsylvania, so I just it was all, very eye opening and whatnot. And then in high school, I dealt with mild acne, not severe, but I had some mild acne. I went to the dermatologist, and after that, I kind of went on this skin kick and was really interested in the skin. And I started taking advanced science classes in high school, thinking that I might go pre-med. But after a conversation with my great aunt, realized I'd like to move around a lot, and I was like, I'm not sure if I love school, but I'm not sure if medical school is the right path to take. And after a conversation with my grandmother, who I lovingly call Glammy, realized, no, I don't think I should do that. I went for communications and marketing and fell into the blogosphere, blog world very early on. I'd say since I was little, really since I can kind of remember, but 7, 8, I had some sort of affinity for products, putting moisturizer on or doing a hair mask. My mom actually pointed out to me the other day when I was little, when grandparents would go on whatever trips or even parents, and sometimes you bring back a gift for your grandchild, and for whatever reason I was obsessed with hotel samples, and my mom reminded me of this. And my grandparents would always, wherever they travel, would come back with all the little bathroom toiletries, like days worth. They would just every day collect new ones and bag them up. I remember they went away for a few weeks at once, and my grandma brought back like tons of bags of all these, hotel samples, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And my mom reminded me how I would mix them and kind of just play, I essentially like little cosmetic chemist with them. So yeah, I've always been into something beauty. At one point, she let me get like one of those makeup application masks that you use in cosmetology school, and I would paint makeup on it. So I was just being very creative and playing from a young age, whether it was getting my hair dyed or mixing random hotel lotion samples because I thought I was creating something different. And then after I went to the derm because of my acne, I just really got into skin health, and through the blogging space then just kept going further down the beauty path.
So it's a relatively young world where creators and influencers have sort of taken over the beauty world, right? Like there was a time when the brands would reach out and try to just, create a partnership with the, creators and try to get the word of mouth going and send them product. It really has shifted a lot now. And what brands have become are the creators themselves, right? The Ian Michael Crumms of the world are the one that are not only leading the conversations, but creating these brands, creating these conversation points within their community.
Digital evolves very fast. I mean, when I technically started blogging in high school with a friend, and it was more fashion related. And when I went to Drexel University in Philadelphia. When I moved to college, I started my blog, and it was literally a blog. I wasn't even really doing Instagram at the early days. I had an Instagram because it had just came out, but it was just personal, and I was blogging every day. And then over the years it shifts so fast, and it shifted from reporting on what's happening to deciding after build whatever size your audience is, once you build your community around you, kind of driving your own conversation as well, beyond just sharing what might be being sent to you from a brand.
I'm going to ask you about that too. And the reason I bring that topic up is you have very unique insight that I want to tap into. Being, I think the numbers said you had, I don't know if this was recently, but somebody had given me a number of 242,000 Instagram followers, and a lot of unique content that you've been putting out. Brands were reaching out to you, I'm assuming, to try to get you to pitch their brands, right? They were sending you influencer marketing packages. They were trying to get your community on board to what it is they were pitching. Tell me a little bit about that. How does that sort of unfold in your world?
Yeah, I mean, I started in fashion. So the first time I ever really got it, when I started blogging, I was doing more like style content. And I remember, I think I don't know if it was the first pitch or maybe the first product, I got sent like a pair of shoes because I was fashion blogging, and it was so exciting. And like, I was like, wait, what? I mean, but this was back in probably 2012. That was an interesting time. And fast forward to today, yes, all the time you pitches or brand sharing products honestly can be quite overwhelming in the beauty space. And I think it shifted from, in my early days I was like, yeah, and I'm still very excited to receive products, but I think it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just got sent this, to it has become such the norm now that I kind of the inverse, where a lot of it gets declined just out of sheer, you can't test everything, to maybe I've already received a package and a brand still wants to send a replacement, or there's only so much square inches of skin I could test something or try something, or have so many hours in a day, and there are so many launches. So yeah, I mean, I definitely now proactively get pitched quite frequently. I try to stay up to date on what's in market, but that interaction I think definitely has been getting more strategic too. At the same point, yes, I receive a lot, but in the early days, only some brands were participating in digital. It was like some brands weren't even touching it in the first few years. Maybe because there also weren't as many creators, it was more of a, well, let's go to a bunch of different demographics. And now I think there's plenty of content creators. There's no shortage of people wanting to be in content. You mentioned earlier, brands also driving their own message. I think tons of creators. There's other brand founders that are creators. Every brand is releasing content in some capacity. So there's no shortage of things for people to view on the internet. So I think brands too now hopefully are getting more specific and strategic around who they send things to, why they're sending them, and being sustainable in that. But it's definitely an interesting thing to navigate. I think early content creators, it's just exciting to start receiving things because it's part of the ecosystem to receive PR or want to work with a brand on some sort of campaign. And then I think as you get further down your creator path, it's like, okay, let's be more specific or selective, or I don't need to accept this package if I'm not going to use it. I jokingly say to my managers, I'm not complaining because I'm very blessed and thankful for all the packages, but I do feel like it's sometimes a part-time job just managing packages. So it's something we started declining things, and I also, it's not out of having no interest in a brand, but if I don't think I can actually even have time to test something or give time or effort into like a sample being set, I don't think it's worth it for the brand too. It's kind of more out of hopefully good karma that I don't want to waste someone's product that they're shipping or feel overwhelmed myself by overcommitting in a sense to like editorially trying so many things.
You said something that really touched a nerve too with the brand partnerships that you create. Like there's a I think you even had a quote somewhere that I saw that said something about, you know, community matters a lot more than just having a big audience, right? There's a big difference between big audience and a big community. I think I saw you give an award at the CEW Beauty Awards. Were you on stage, right? And when they
I was.
so let's
Yeah.
talk about community. Like I've been going to that thing for many years, right? And there's on one hand I can count how many people that when they come out on stage, there's like a rush in the audience of like applause, and you could just feel people get excited about what's happening now. And from this speaker, like this is the direction our world is going. Like with people like this, and when you came on at the table, when you came on, everybody was elbowing each other, like, pay attention. This is our guy. This is our guy. And then you were great. And, of course, a round of applause. But like it made me think as I was preparing for this, I'm like, that's community, right? Of course, you have all these followers on Instagram and all the social sites because not only are you talking about things that are relative, but it's the story that you're telling and how you're telling it. But building this community, whether it's in beauty or skincare, whatever it is, means a lot to the whole conversation too.
Yeah, I think, I'm not going to give an specific example here, but I've heard people pass on creators because maybe they're a micro creator or they're looking for a certain audience size. And I've always kind of giggled at that because, I think I don't have stats handy, but I know certain micro creators that convert super well. And I think too, once you get past a certain size, it's hard to also engage with your community and it makes it harder. So even if you are, that becomes more and more all consuming. So I think sometimes smaller accounts have, an even stronger community because they're able to really have one-on-one rapport with people. So I think it's so important. And I used to in earlier years get really obsessive with numbers, and obviously it's an important piece of the puzzle, but I also really love in-person interaction, and that's been a huge influence into Boys in Beauty launching. And yes, digital is super important, and it continues to be very important, but I think this idea of community, whether it's living online or also taking it from online and then having it in person, is even more important than it was pre-pandemic. I think after the pandemic, everyone's really craved community. We all spend more time on our laptops. We're recording this via a laptop, now on our phones. This is obviously different speaking with you via a laptop versus like replying to someone on an Instagram comment. But I think we as humans continue to crave more and more in person touch points as the world becomes more digitized in many, many facets. So yeah, I think it's essential to anything. As AI and this whole like digital world keeps evolving faster and faster, I think anything that feels like that starts to not resonate as strong with people. So having like any sort of human touch, one-on-one interaction, which can also be done via digital. I mean, I have creator friends that reply to DMs like for hours a day, which also too is very, all consuming, but that's how they also maintain like a strong community sense, even if they have such a massive platform. But I kind of said this earlier, I think that's an easier task to do when you have a smaller account. And to me, it's not about, yes, this like huge number, because there's also more celebrity style creators who maybe never interact with people. And it's more of just a broadcast, and that's not a community. You might have fans or, people paying attention or listening to what you're doing, but it is a different interaction than actually having some sort of one-on-one touch point with someone, hearing feedback from them. Yeah, it's just a different interaction.
There's a form of responsibility behind it too. Like I know skincare is very important to you, and your grandmother suffered from melanoma, right?
She
And
did. She's still with us, thankfully. That's Glammy, who I referenced earlier. So she's a big part of my life. But yes, she did have a major melanoma surgery.
from that, your eyes, which were already open, really got open. And one of the things you said was it was important for you to be licensed in what you're doing because you think they're and use the term scam-fluencers, right? These are people that are giving advice. These are people that are telling people how to care for their skin, how to do this, how to do that, but they don't have any formal training. They're just kind of winging it, right? So there's a big difference too between being licensed and not being licensed. Wouldn't you say?
The internet is an interesting place, including skin, but even many other health topics. This idea of expert is, there's no one kind of tracking that. There's people in skin that just talk about anything and everything, and it's all driven on trying to drive affiliate sales or sell this or sell that. And yeah, it feels it's a bit too salesy. And I think even beyond skin, there's other verticals where people just essentially feel like they make things up in order to sell a supplement or sell whatever it is. It could be across so many different industries without actually having any formal training. So for me, I hit a point in beauty where I, was talking about skin, talking about, products to use. And I just hit this point where I was like, well, I think I should at least do some sort of formal training so I have confidence that one, I'm saying the right thing, which definitely happened, doing aesthetics training. But then beyond that, I try to be very cognizant of like my lane and what I should actively be speaking on, because I talk a lot about skin cancer prevention. I've actually started getting pegged as like dermatologist just out of people assuming, which I've never stated ever. So I'm always like trying to make it clear, like I am not a dermatologist. I'm an esthetician. I'm friends with a lot of dermatologists. I'm not diagnosing any disease, but if you have any concerns, please see a dermatologist, and trying to make that very clear. And I think there's sadly, yeah, the scam-fluencer in a sense who kind of will talk about any product and essentially talk about diseases or skin conditions that they should not be speaking on because they're not formally trained. And goes beyond aesthetics, speaking medical doctor and trying to like hawk a product. And it's just really sad that unless you're really in it and can see that, it's hard to decipher. Media literacy isn't the best among many people, and it really is deceptive to the consumer. So, I'm thankful for all the other estheticians or dermatologists, doctors who go on social and really try to counter like that misinformation because it's very widespread. And I think as an industry, brands too need to really get behind medical trained professionals, other estheticians, and other key opinion leaders that can like fight against kind of this just really weird moment in time where I always say none of us are at a shortage of content or information because there's just it's all consuming, and I think part of that then becomes almost this like numbing where the regular consumer, it's hard to decipher because it's like we're just constantly being fed and you have to really pull yourself back and be like, what did I just watch? Who said it? Do they have credentials? And what does that mean for me then? And that just doesn't happen most times.
About talking the talk and walking the walk. So, for those of you that don't know, um, Ian also supporting the MRF was the Get Naked spokesperson last year, and literally in Times Square on a billboard. I've never seen it. Maybe we'll find a clip and throw it on the podcast. You got to tell me how this unfolded because that is forget about just being secure in messaging, but like also to be able to put yourself out like that. It's the biggest city in the world on a billboard, like having your naked body, up on a billboard, you know, to support this foundation. How did that unfold? And were you nervous about it? And how did it, tell me about that.
Well, for just like initial clarity, yes, I may have been naked at the shoot, but nothing was actually shown in the photo. It was very tasteful, a very tasteful nude in a sense. So, yeah, I mean, after I became an esthetician, I've been into sunscreen and sun safety since I was little. You mentioned, my grandmother is a melanoma survivor. I learned about melanoma at a very young age and skin cancer and was very cognizant of, the damage the sun can do to skin and, about living sun safe life and using sunscreen and avoiding shade and all the things. So after I did aesthetics training, and I was kind of like looking for, I'm going to get to there's kind of a bit more backstory to get to the Melanoma Research Foundation, but I was looking for kind of more of a deeper purpose. I loved starting out in content and talking about fashion. I'll always be a fashion boy. I love clothing, but I got to this point where I was like, what am I doing all this for? But through beauty, I felt like, oh, I can help people. They have more questions when I talk about beauty. They're curious what this skincare product's for. And then that took a step further with aesthetics. And then I kind of had this realization too, like, oh, I've always talked about, protecting skin, or you kind of like had that mentality as an individual. And also, you know, sun being 80 to 90% of skin aging, it also, from an aesthetics point, makes a lot of sense of something to speak on. So I started doing more and more content around sun safe practices, wearing sunscreen, and trying to make it, as I like to say, make sun safety sexy. I was trying to like bring this like more lifestyle approach to something that traditionally has been very medical. Doctors talking about sun safety. So I always say, I'm not a dermatologist. I'm like a derm's bestie. I'm kind of funneling people to a dermatologist, and I want to have this lighthearted is probably not the best word, but more of a light conversation around something serious like skin cancer prevention, getting skin exams. So about 4 years, yeah, this is my fourth year. About 4 years ago, I started working with the Skin Cancer Foundation and joined their gala committee. My aunt had known a derm involved for many years. We went to their gala. Before I knew it, I was asking to be on the committee. I joined the committee. I had done some nonprofit work and volunteering when I was in college, so I was also kind of proactively looking for something in a nonprofit space to dedicate some time to. And I started working with the Skin Cancer Foundation, and I really enjoyed it. And then flash forward another year or so, at some point I had gone to the Melanoma Research Foundation's gala in New York. I was a guest of Elta MD Skincare, had already joined the Skin Cancer Foundation committee and was kind of looking to keep going and doing more than I had been doing. So I also joined the Melanoma Research Foundation committee for their gala, and it kind of just started snowballing. I built a rapport with their team, was on the committee. At some point, they came back, and the second year of like knowing them had awarded me their influencer award back in the fall of 24. Kind of in the middle of all that happening, I'm trying to like have a flashback as to how the dominoes fell, but I think I had asked them something about Get Naked, or just like something about the Get Naked campaign came up in a conversation, generally speaking, and shortly after they came back and actually like approached me if I'd be interested in being the next spokesperson. So I did know about it early on. They actually told me that it had was the earliest they had asked someone to be the spokesperson or had like locked someone in. So it was like the end of the summer, I guess the end of summer of 24. So I actually, it was right before I had received the award. It kind of all started stacking up. And so I mentally knew like, okay, this is happening. I'm accepting this spokespersonship. To some people, it might be their worst nightmare, being naked in Times Square, kind of like doing this whole public speaking, public exposure thing. I actually do like public speaking, but it was a daunting idea. I'm doing a nude photo shoot. So thankfully, since I knew well in advance, like 6 months before the shoot was actually happening, I just one mentally, physically, emotionally was preparing. I was already working out and I try to live a healthy lifestyle, but I was like, well, I'm going to do the gym a little bit more than I was doing. And I'm going to like mentally prepare. Being in content, you know, I still do photo shoots here and there for new headshots. I used to do photo shoots all the time when I was a fashion blogger, and a dear friend of mine, Troy, who's been doing my headshots for many years, I messaged him and alerted him, hey, this is coming up. And I actually did a trial shoot with him where I went and did headshots, and then I got naked, and Troy helped kind of pre-coach me. And I like did some like mock poses, and then we reviewed the photos afterwards. So I was like, oh, I like how I look here. This was very revealing. I feel like I was very revealing laying this way. We kind of did a mock, and since it was my friend, I was like, I don't care. But that was also like a very helpful thing. So I definitely took a lot of pre-planning. I wasn't just thrown into it. I tend to get obsessive with things I do. So once we locked this in, it was a very planned out experience. I'm technically still still the spokesperson. It's a year spokespersonship, and it's April of the following year. So in about 3 weeks, I don't know when this will go up, but if it goes up in May, the new spokesperson will have been announced. But it lasts for a year. A lot of the main kind of promotion is in May for Melanoma Skin Cancer Awareness Month. But as I say, I would get a bit obsessive. So since it was coming up, I went into production mode, and I've had a history of producing events before with my team. And it was like, well, let's have a launch party. Let's do another fundraising event. So, I mean, over the course of the first few months, I was involved in like 2 shopping events with Veronica Beard. I had a friend of mine help orchestrate a partnership with Versace. We did a shopping event with Versace. I helped team Glowbar up with the MRF, and we did a whole promotion with Glowbar, the facial studio. I threw a launch party the day it came out at PhD Midtown with a lot of my industry friends and creator friends. We did a couple TV segments. We did this satellite media tour. So I was on, I think, at least 29 TV radio segments around it. I went obsessive for about 6 months. I pretty much did my normal day-to-day content work and dedicated about half my time, I think, with 6 months of planning for the rollout. So it was a lot of volunteer hours, but it was very much worth it because I still, I pretty frequently get told by, whether someone follows me online or just in person that, I was the reason someone scheduled their derm appointment, or the reason they're wearing sunscreen every day, or have also helped find a doctor for someone who really needs a skin exam. So when those things happen, it shows the reason why, all that effort gets put into it, and it is rewarding. But yeah, it definitely was the first time experience, and who knows, I was joking saying this is like the first and last time I'm taking my clothes off for you guys, like enjoy it now. Unless I get asked to be the spokesperson again, I don't think we're doing a nude shoot. But it was a really amazing experience.
That's unbelievable. It's, like I said, you're doing it for the cause, but to be able to do it and be proud of it is a whole nother thing. And just absolutely well done. And I told myself when I was asking you that question, I was trying to picture myself in my own brain. Could I ever? And as a almost 60-year-old man now, you are going to be so happy you did that, because when you're old like me, you're going to look back and it's going to be like one of these moments. So good for you.
It was definitely. You asked if I think said nervous, or I forget which word you used earlier before the shoot. I think I had prepared so much that actually the day of the shoot, I was so excited because there was so much effort putting into the pre-planning that I was like, I'm ready to do it, and I was like, let's just do it. And I think we shot for about I think it was maybe about 2 hours, and it went by very, very fast. I'm like, oh, it's over. But yes, it was a beyond amazing experience. And if you're listening, please support the Melanoma Research Foundation. They do lots of amazing work for melanoma patients and advocacy and all things melanoma prevention.
Here, here. When we post the episode, we'll be sure to put links into their sites as well. I wanted to talk to you about Boys in Beauty. So I'm very excited about. Here's the one thing I'm not excited about. I'm waiting for my invite to come to join. I haven't seen that yet. I'm sure that was an oversight, but that's okay. No, no, we won't hold that against you.
You'll be receiving it immediately after this. I will say I unless someone came to the site and put their email in, it probably hasn't been received because there's been a lot going on that I haven't done any proactive outreach because I've just been managing the hysteria around it.
David Silberglade in my office is a member, and every once in a while he'll walk by my office because he knows I want to join, and he's just like, I'll put in a good word for you."
Oh, I'm glad words on the street. That's hilarious.
There you go. So we're both part of this, this world of ours, which, calling it like it is, it's women are 90% of it, 85%, whatever the numbers are, of this beauty world, the marketing, supporting it, PR, that sort of thing. When I first heard of it and looked into it, I was like, this is great, right? Like, we have the CEW, we have all these women organizations that are needed and loved, do great work. But how about one for the guys too? Like one that we can support each other, that we can come together as a community. And here you've done it. So where was the aha moment? When did it spark, and how are things going?
The aha moment, maybe about 2 years ago. I, being in content, go to a lot of events. My managers say all the time, they're like, Ian, you go to more events than anyone we know. I'm like, I wouldn't disagree because I feel like I'm always out. And I go to a lot of events, and at a lot of the beauty events, many times I'm the only guy, or I'll see maybe one or two other male editors or another creator. And I mean, I totally fine. I feel I'm friends with so many women, but it is something when I would see a guy at one of these events, it'd be like, oh, there's another guy, and we'd naturally chat and having conversations with different people in the industry, primarily some of the men's editors. This conversation of, oh, let's get the boys together, let's have dinner soon, let's have like an industry dinner, kept coming up. After that happened a few times, it was like, oh, someone said like, Ian, you should plan it because like I have this, background of doing certain events and whatnot. And so I just kind of sat on it for a bit. And simultaneously with that, as a creator, I also get outreach by brands. And sometimes the outreach has been specifically about, speaking to the men's market. I think the industry overall, and I've heard it from different advisors for years now, has been like, it's time to focus on men's. It's time to focus on the men's market. Let's, start marketing to men. We're going to launch this product for men, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems to be a continual thing. Oh, now's the time. Now's the time. And it never seems to like fully click. That outreach happens. And anytime it does, I'm always excited, and I'm happy to speak to that, but I've also always as myself never thought, oh, I'm speaking to like only guys. I have a ton of female followers. I feel like I don't try to gender anything I'm really doing. And anytime that outreach has happened, I've always thought, well, I hope brands or whatever this kind of outreach request is for are also speaking to at least 20 other guys because I don't represent the male population. It's the same as going to one female and being like, how do I speak to women? She'll know how to speak to women better than I do because I'm not a female, but she also, no matter who it is, doesn't represent the global population of women. So this whole idea too of like a representative male voice started brewing. And then also just mentioned earlier, like producing events, loving this in-person experience. Kind of all these ideas were brewing separately, simultaneously. And then one day it was like, oh, like the idea of the collective started forming and it's evolved, a lot, especially over the last 6 months into what it is for today. But while rooting in industry, the mission of Boys in Beauty really is about democratizing beauty for men and discussing societal stigmas. Another key piece of kind of the different ideas brewing is the idea that a lot of men to this day still don't feel that beauty is for them in whatever capacity that means. When maybe they grew up just not having education around it, or they grew up with a influence saying like that's for women or you're gay if you do that. And I kind of was like, that's so fucking dumb. Like, who cares?
So
And you don't have to cut the fuck out. Like, it's like, like it is, it's fucking dumb. And it's like, it's a moisturizer. Like, if you want to wear a little concealer too. So, I'm a proud gay man, but my whole positioning with Boys in Beauty is this idea of democratizing beauty for men. And at the end of the day, why does beauty have to be gendered or sexually oriented? Yes, there are certain products that are going to work for a male better because of anatomy, whether that's the shape of a press-on nail or, not all men, but some men have oilier skin. So maybe they need certain different products. So yes, there are certain products that definitely can be better suited for a guy, but there's also so many products, that are coming out or already on the market that are applicable for either gender. And it's like brands have only spoke to mostly females around them. So of course, like, I think there's another piece of the idea of brewing was I get asked all the time because I have so many female followers online or just my closest girlfriends being like, what should my boyfriend do or what should my husband do? And getting asked to help encourage a male to partake in beauty in some capacity. So it's like also all these women are asking for it. So that I think validates why is it sexually oriented as well. It's like, well, the wives and girlfriends of so many guys are wanting men to step up and take care of themselves. And to me, beauty is an umbrella term. I think the industry, beauty is women, grooming is men. Men groom, women use beauty. And to me, grooming is under beauty. Grooming is I cut my nails, I shave my face, so women could shave her legs. That feels very in hygiene to me. And beauty is the umbrella term. So to me, a boy in beauty is someone who, yes, can be doing grooming. A boy in beauty could also be kind of a more standard boy in beauty as the industry's portrayed him, that's using a lot of makeup, maybe using foundation, eyeshadow, all the things. But a boy in beauty also is over here on the beauty spectrum. Maybe it's a guy who wants to wash his face and wear sunscreen, because I'm always going to champion sunscreen, but maybe it's a very simple routine. I say beauty's a spectrum, and it's like we're all on a different area of the spectrum. Over here, you have like a true super user, someone who's using makeup and fragrance and hair care and all the things, and that's great. And over here, you might have just a very simple routine that's rooted in basic hygiene and hopefully, ideally, sunscreen. But I think the industry too has only spoken to the endpoints. Mostly, it's not that nothing has been happened in the middle ground, but mostly the industry's spoken to a standard I'm going to, here's a that's using beauty products and it's in a very traditionally female lens of using a full face of makeup, eyeshadow, and all the things. Absolutely love that. Appreciate that. That's great. Over here, you have the like 5-in-1 messaging, sometimes vintage marketing that speaks to men like Neanderthals and like they're idiots. And that's not going to encourage better participation because they're just being spoken to like they walked out of a cave. To me, is influenced more in a toxic masculine lens. So I like to say boys and beauty is the middle ground and the whole spectrum. And we happily accept this side of the spectrum, the like super user, makeup user. But we're essentially like against the archaic messaging of the past of dumbing it down for a guy and acting like it's grooming and that it's not classified as beauty. I think that has that toxic masculine lens to it. So it's all about like we don't boys and beauty, we're not here to tell you how to show up. It's just to give you permission how to show up as you wish. And that's whether you're using 20 products or you're using 2.
I think you put it so eloquently, and you make it sound like I could tell you've just been thinking about this for just a really long time, and I appreciate you putting it in layman's terms too for exactly where you're headed. We almost could look back a little bit and say, you use the term stigma, and it's so true. Maybe we learned a lesson from the ladies, right? Like they. We've had a few guests on here that have, that have a background in sports, and for too long they were left out of that whole sports world because it wasn't ladylike, or you throw
Mm.
like a girl type thing, and it took them forever to sort of beat that back to where they're at the point now where they have women's leagues and success of all the women's sports, and from soccer to basketball to wherever that's going, and it's just getting better and better. You're taking the other side of that coin now, right? And introducing back to men, something that comes naturally and normally to them, and almost saying to them, like, don't be afraid to, be you. If this is you, then don't be afraid to be you. And even more importantly, giving an outlet where they can sort of live their best life there.
Yeah, I think if you look at history too, not to like make this like a going into a bajillion examples, but there's, ancient Egypt, with coal in the eyes, and there's so many examples in history where men participated in beauty, not grooming practices. I was in a conversation the other day about nails, and particularly a lot of straight men that are like painting their nails or doing designs on their nails, and it's a form of self-expression. And I had never thought of this, but randomly I was just like, yeah, it's just the same as like getting a tattoo. And then I was like, wait, yeah, why haven't I ever thought of that? I'm like, why is putting a graphic design on your nail any different than a guy going to the tattoo salon and getting whatever they get on their body at the tattoo salon? I'm like, that's so dumb to separate it. So yeah, we're just here to be like, show up as you are. Like, if you want to wear makeup, great. If you don't, great. If you want to use whatever beauty product, great. I think the only thing I'm going to be rigid about is sunscreen, because I do appreciate when people are working towards having healthy skin. But yeah, you mentioned too, like we have CEW and these other industry organizations, and I think that's a great call out. And I know you had Alana on the show. I watched her full episode. I adore her. She's been very
Yes, great.
supportive of boys in beauty, and I will use the time to thank Alana from CEW and Andrea at CEW publicly for their support. While I am rooting in industry, and I'm excited to send you your formal invitation as immediately after we hang up this call, I do see boys in beauty also like transcending the industry. We are focusing on doing industry programming, mixers for the industry, and programming that's rooted in the industry, like talking about the men's market. I think that's another key piece here of boys in beauty is we are gathering guys in the beauty industry together, or people who touch the industry, and also talking about the men's market. It's like a lot of the programming is specifically dialed in on let's discuss marketing demand or men's participation or these cultural stigmas. We have a virtual masterclass this week with Emily Rose Campbell, who is at Iced Media. I know I know Leslie Ann Hall at Iced Media, and she's doing a digital advertising boot camp for our members, and it is hyper focused on marketing to men and speaking about what messages and campaigns are successful to men, and any data that Emily's been able to pull to support that. So beyond also just, yes, getting men in the industry, when we do programming, it is about the men's market and talking about that market. So we are rooted in the industry. And I also foresee in the future having like this broadcast messaging and this talking about different stigmas or things that have stopped us in the past, or this kind of public acceptance of male beauty, also talking to the consumer and going beyond the industry. We're always rooted in industry and creating these moments, but we will at some point likely add on also something for other guys. It's for the guys in beauty that are in a different industry, but they're enthusiasts and they want to partake. I think we will definitely offer them something in the future, while always holding on to the industry rooting. So I'd like to say it's kind of like a combo between more kind of traditional establishment like a CEW or rooting in industry, and there's a B2B element, but the mission is about democratizing beauty for men. And I think to really do that, we also have to make sure we're having some sort of consumer programming and having constant media go out that is addressing stigmas. We started a new series this week on Substack spotlighting different content creators. And within the interview series, I asked them about their kind of like how they also, as you asked me how I got into beauty, how they're getting into beauty, what it's been like for them. Have they experienced any stigmas or roadblocks? And I think, since we're spotlighting a lot of content creators, they're out on the internet posting and they're seeing firsthand different, feedback, whether positive or negative, from their followers. So we're starting to also take that information and hopefully bring it up and bring it to light so we can, as an industry, start addressing it. And it's like, let's just kind of show a very diverse mix of guys and have a mentality of who fucking cares if you use beauty products, because it doesn't have to be gendered. So we've gendered boys in beauty to have that conversation to hopefully work towards like it doesn't have to be gendered.
And I know we're getting short on time, but there was one other question I definitely wanted to throw by you, and asking you what do you think is next for this world of beauty? Like, I want you to sort of rack your brain for things like social selling and AI and all the sort of questions that get asked to the Ian Michael Crumms of the world that are leading us into this next phase of beauty. Maybe I'll change it up a little bit. Where would you like to see beyond what we've talked about? What would you like to see come to the beauty world as far as partnering with creators and brands and tying in with this social selling, getting everybody to sort of think about what's the next big thing? What do you think that next big thing is?
I think AI definitely is like shifting things in a huge way with recommendations. And for a while, traditional PR felt like it was kind of falling off. But now with the LLMs and getting legacy media and mentions as a, kind of cited as a trusted source in other publications, whether you're an expert or a brand, having that kind of traditional PR wheel kind of moving in a very well oiled manner is important. And I think AI recommendations are definitely really shifting things that, even beyond skincare, just seeing friends' habits of how much they ask AI for advice in a plethora of ways. I think that's going to keep really changing how people shop beauty. In terms of shopping and just consumerism, I do think, going back to your question earlier to me about just how it is like operating as a creator, and the kind of like touching on PR samples earlier, in terms of the question of what I hope to see, I hope, and it's not like this conversation hasn't been brought up, but I really do hope brands start to think about sustainability and waste in a good way. As a person who receives a ton of PR packages, I really appreciate when they're small and not filled with extra stuffing, build outs. Obviously, receiving a cool, beautiful package is exciting, and from a social media standpoint, makes it easy to visually post something. But I'm like hoping brands kind of like shrink down mailers to like be self-contained in more of the size of whatever they're shipping, because I know I'm not the one who sent it, but I feel a bit guilty receiving so many packages when I know there's so much like waste, a lot of things that aren't being recycled, and just it feels it feels a little super indulgent in a sense. So my hope would be that brands start to just really get strategic in how they ship things and design things, so they're not, yeah, they can be impactful and fun for social, but also don't feel wasteful. I'm trying to remember like the other 8 of your 10 questions you merged.
I think you did a great job in encapsulating all of it. Ian Michael Crumm, thank you so much for joining us. If you're interested in talking more to Ian, you can either go to any industry event. He'll be the one with the giant crowd around him. If you can carve your way through it and say hello, he's always great about saying hello back. So I appreciate that. But if somebody wanted to join Poison Beauty, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, so the site's poisonbeauty.com. We haven't flipped on this consumer thing, as I mentioned. It is for industry. And right now, hyper focused on the New York market, but we do have events kind of lining up. We have one in development in LA. We're actually doing a very wild card event next week in Paris. So we're definitely, expanding, but a lot of the programming is in New York. And there's the monthly virtual event we're doing. In terms of joining, it is set up very similar to a private club, like joining like a Soho House or, another private club. So there is an application on the site. And really the application is just to make sure that someone has the best intentions and they agree to the code of conduct, because it's all about, this idea of kindness and acceptance and a very broad view of beauty. So just want to make sure everyone involved in the message has like a good heart and kind of direction in why they want to be a part of it. And it is all about the community. So yeah, just submit the form and we get back to you. I've been building out my membership committee, so there's a lot of moving pieces, but it's exciting. And they just submit the form. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's really just to make sure like we know what they do in the space, why they are in beauty. It's kind of like most of the questions you ask me, it's kind of just making sure we have a good understanding of who's like wanting to come into the collective, and how can we support them, and how do we find ways that they can support the other members. And I think another key thing here too is it is addressing the men's market. So, we do have a female member. It's not that we're excluding women by any means. Like, women are definitely free to join. I think we're over indexing on guys, hence the name. But like, I'm not saying there's no women involved. I editorially invited females to the last few events, but out of the like about 50 guys we have right now, there's one female member. So I'm excited to democratize beauty for men in many
Awesome.
ways.
Well done, Ian. Bravo. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
This was such a fun podcast to be on, Mike. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to share it.
Thanks, buddy.